When you look at what's happening today in the luxury, coming back to the luxury industry, most people don't desire a product or a brand. They desire the desire of someone else. So this is something which is mastered by some brands. So this is one of the reasons why, for instance, if you go to a Rolex store today, you won't be able to buy any Rolex. Okay, it's just a showroom, but you have to be on a waiting list to buy the Rolex. It's not that Rolex cannot manufacture the watch. It's just that they create rarity. Because if you can't get that watch, you are ready to kill to have it. You see what I mean?
Hi, Dr. Maman-Larraufie. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Emilia. Thank you for welcoming me.
Let's start with your journey. What first drew you to this work and how did that lead to where you are today?
So I fell into semiotics when I was doing my PhD. I wanted to do qualitative research, but initially I'm a scientific person, so I needed a structure. And semiotics is a discipline which has been created by mathematicians. So that was answering my need of, structured, rigorous research, but for qualitative materials. So I fell into that while I was doing my thesis, and which was about the hidden meaning behind buying luxury counterfeits. And from there, I started building up. And from counterfeits, I went to real brands, which is a little bit more lucrative as well as a consultant, I would say.
Okay, so let's get into the foundation of your work. This idea that luxury isn't just about product, but about meaning. What does it actually mean when we say that luxury is about symbolism? And how should that shape the way brands think about the value they create?
So when we speak about the meaning of brands, the semiotic meaning of brands, we actually face two different directions, two different topics. One is the meaning for clients, and one is the meaning for the brands themselves, and even for the industry, I would say. When you aspire to belong to the world of luxury as a company, if you are an entrepreneur, for instance, and you wish to become part of this industry, you have certain codes to respect. You have rules to abide by. Otherwise, you won't sound like legitimate in the industry. So that's for, I would say, the symbolic part for the brands. For example, when you look at the luxury companies, wherever in the world, most of the products they offer look like very simple. But there is a hidden complexity for the manufacturing, which requires a lot of know-how, time, skills, people, and so forth. So this is what I call the swan effect. It's one of the rules you have to abide by. If your product looks too complex, that's not luxury. But then there is also the meaning for clients. Because when you buy a luxury product, between you and me, you buy something which is completely useless. Luxury is about wasting. It's about wasting your money, because if you want to carry your stuff, you don't need to pay a 10,000 handbag. You just go, to the next supermarket and you buy a paper bag, which is much cheaper and probably more practical. That means that when people go for luxury consumption, they don't do it for the practicality of the products, but for something else. And that something else is exactly the meaning that the fact of consuming a luxury product creates for them, or when they are using it, creates for others. So the way other people perceive themselves because they are wearing luxury products. Luxury is something which is usually used, which can be used by clients to differentiate themselves. And when I say to differentiate themselves, is because human beings, when they belong to a social group, which is, the case for all of us, there is a tendency where people try to belong. They always want to belong to a group they don't belong to. And they also want to differentiate themselves within the group they belong to. And luxury, with all the symbolic meaning that it has, meaning coming from the category, meaning coming from the product, which might be an iconic product, meaning coming from the brand itself and its history, the country of origin it has, whatever. This meaning is helping them build what we call the stratification in society. That's exactly what we call this differentiation, vertical differentiation. I want to change my, level in the society. I want to look like I'm richer, I'm more powerful, I'm sexier. And also the horizontal differentiation, which is I'm in a group of people everyone has a Kelly bag. How can I get a Kelly bag which might be a little bit different from the other ones?
So it's really, really something quite unique to luxury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not exclusive to luxury. You may find that in other categories. You can't have a luxury brand without that, I would say.
It's more significant.
Yes.
It plays a bigger role for us.
And that's all what the brands sell us. Because when I was saying that you waste money because you don't need to pay so much, for a bag, the value you put in the bag is exactly all this intangible aspect that is, brought by the premium you are ready to pay for, which is often quite disconnected from the cost of manufacturing. That premium, you are ready to pay for it because of the meaning it brings.
That's a really good segue into storytelling, where you're going. So one of the clearest places that symbolism comes to life is in brand storytelling. And in luxury, we're always talking about storytelling. And something that happens for luxury is we use archetypes and myths. And this actually really stood out to me when I was doing the course. I remember when I first was learning about the archetypes, and I think at the time we were using the Dior J'adore case study.
Maybe, yeah.
And I remember when the Dior archetype was explained to me, it came to life and I could see it. I could see what it was. How do myths and archetypes shape the storytelling of luxury brands, and why do they remain so powerful today?
I think you have to go back to the very definition of a myth. A myth is something which has been created by human beings to explain what can't be explained. And as part of the myth, you have heroes who face conflicts, and there is hopefully the resolution of the conflict. And for brand storytelling, the resolution comes thanks to the brand, which means that the brand is helping our hero, who is a projection of the client, to actually solve his or her, let's say, not issues, but desires, or, what is not met in terms of...
hitting the spot.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
What is important is that when you want to build a myth, why do you do this? It's because a myth is long-lasting. We even call mythical brands. It's not exclusive to luxury. You have mythical brands, which like Harley Davidson, for example. What is a mythical brand? Is a brand which has started its life, disrupting codes, making something no one's expect, being bold and, I would say, a troubleshooter in the society, And then little by little, the troubleshooter is going to solve some issue in the society, explain something nobody can explain, and little by little he becomes a sage. And after 80 years, it's part of a culture. It becomes part of a culture. When you look at the two main countries which are quoted for luxury, France and Italy, if you ask, let's say, a Japanese person, what are the first words which come to his mind or her mind, when you say France, very, very soon, Chanel, Dior are going to pop out. And Prada, if you are in Italy, or Fendi. The brands have become cultural artifacts of the country themselves. So building up upon this myth is so important, because if you just speak about the story of the brand, so when I say the story, I speak of, we were created that moment, we did that, we had this person as a CEO, and then we had this designer, who is not a designer, because in luxury we say creator, etc. Excuse me, it's boring. It's true, and it's useful, but it's boring.
And it's not human.
And it's not human. And if you start telling a story, like a bedtime story, people are going to first memorize, and second, they are going to get emotions. And that's how you connect with people. So the myth is part of the emotion building process, I would say.
And what about the archetype? Do you have anything that you want to add about the archetype?
Archetypes are something which has been created by marketers, not only, again, for the luxury. We speak of brand archetype because research has shown that when people think about brands, they usually experiment or experience or buy. When you ask them to describe those brands, they use adjectives to describe the brand, which are actually personality traits of humans. If you ask people, can you tell me something about Coca-Cola? They will say, it's a very young, joyful, nice, friendly brand. And a second piece of research has shown that we tend to buy products who have a personality close to our personality. Our real personality or, and that's very useful in the luxury industry, for our aspirational personality, who we would like to be. So if you start working on archetypes, you are easily matching, the group of people who is looking after being such an archetype to some extent. So it's a natural, I would say, an easy segmentation of your market.
Yeah, so it's essentially easier for the marketers to go to market because it's very easy to stay on course because you have this person in front of you. So on that note, for a brand team, what are some practical tips that you have and you give to your clients about bringing a myth and an archetype into a campaign or a brand expression? And it may be a very big question. So even if it's just where should they start to make sure they're doing this?
Alors, first, you have to clarify your brand DNA. Sorry, this looks like very basic. So many brands have been doing things since ages without really questioning the reason why they do it. I'm not speaking of the top, I'm not speaking of Chanel or Dior, who know very well that. Today, if we think of Gucci, for example, who is in a troubled moment, one of the reasons is honestly, when you look at what's been done in the past years, you don't really know where the brand is. And that comes probably from the fact that they lack clarity on their brand DNA. So you have to be clear, crystal clear on your brand DNA, your backbone, I would say, your philosophy, your mission, your values, what you are ready to fight for, and so forth. So that's the first step. And then the second step, what I say to my client is you have to create your myth. You cannot borrow a myth. It's easy to say, okay, we are going to make a co-branding with James Bond, and that's a myth already. So we make this collab, and then we have a nice video, which is a myth. No, I'm sorry. That's not your myth. It's another one. So you have to create your own. And that requires time, energy, and creativity.
Okay, so if I'm a marketer, I've got my DNA, I'm really clear on what it is. What's the next step towards using myths and archetypes in your favor to grow your brand?
Well, you have different methodologies to do that. You usually go to agencies or people like me who actually help you through different workshops, think about all that, create your myth, design your story. Then you take the baby and you give it to an advertising, agency with creators, designers who are going to give life to that story. Because you have the story, and then you have the way to say the story, which are two different things. Often people think about stories just directly in terms of characters and he has big eyes and she's blonde, and that's wrong. When you create a story, if you think about the novels you read when you were younger, maybe, Alexander Dumas, for example, you have people who are willing to get revenge, people who love one another, people who look for the treasure, people who hide the treasure, people who, etc., etc. So you have roles, you have a plot in between the roles. For me, this is the biggest difficulty with my clients, is they can't choose. They want to be at the same time the lover and the guy next door, and they don't want to choose because choosing is excluding. Because when you choose an archetype, you are going to naturally talk to a group of people, which means that the other ones are not really, taking you that way. So you are naturally saying, this is a market I'm not going to focus upon. But that's the definition of marketing.
Do you think it's got a little bit to do with the environment today? The world is about inclusivity and it's all about political correctness. Do you think that brands have become a little bit scared?
I think the way we take it today, or we interpret it today in advertising or in communication is, well, how can we please everyone? How can we make everyone be concerned, feel concerned by that communication? Respecting diversity is really respecting diversity. So we have different people, we have different spots for everyone. We have different products depending on your hair type, depending on your body. We have different clothes depending on your body shape. And that's the beauty of the world. The world is looking nice because we are different. We need to speak at the same time to the millennials, the Gen Z, the boomers, and at the end, you don't speak to anyone.
That's really clear. Thank you. Let's move on to desirability. So archetypes and meaning are part of the picture, but that's not the whole story. So something has to trigger a strong sense of want So my question to you is, what actually creates desire in the consumer's mind, and how do things like storytelling, status and cultural signals help shape that?
I'm going to start with, a little bit of theory, if I may. When you take the word desire or desirable, which is different, by the way. Desire is a move, that we have. Desirable is the aspect of a product. It's a characteristic of a product or a service that makes us have this move. It's a bit different. Desirable comes from Latin. And the Latin word is desiderare. And desiderare, if you translate it, means stop contemplating the stars. Okay. Which means that what creates desire is the fact that at some point you have aspired to something, you have to aspire to something, you reach it, and that's it. Desire stops.
Okay, it's something you can't quite catch.
Exactly.
I like this.
And that's why when you look at what's happening today in the luxury, coming back to the luxury industry, most people don't desire a product or a brand. They desire the desire of someone else.
The thing they can't have.
Exactly. So this is something which is mastered by some brands. So this is one of the reasons why, for instance, if you go to a Rolex store today, you won't be able to buy any Rolex. Okay, it's just a showroom, but you have to be on a waiting list to buy the Rolex. It's not that Rolex cannot manufacture the watch. It's just that they create rarity. Because if you can't get that watch, you are ready to kill to have it. You see what I mean? The desire is stronger and stronger, months after months, year after year, and then you are really, willing to get that watch. So you have to create that little sense of unreachable. Okay, it's unreachable. It's beyond what I could imagine. However, if you don't want to kill the motivation to desire something, it should be difficult to get, but not impossible to get. Because if it's impossible, it looks like too distant, so you're not motivated anymore.
And would you argue that's the pyramid, strategy from a lot of luxury brands with the accessible luxury pillar?
So this is a nice and interesting question, because we should not forget that the definition of luxury is relative to people. I work with Orient Express. The amount of money you have to spend to sleep in the train, for you, for me, is a dream. It's reachable, but it's, it might be part of our desire for luxury. But if you take someone like movie star or Jeff Bezos, who is spending 17 million for his wedding, 5,000, 6,000, euro night room is nothing. You see what I mean? So
absolutely.
We tend to think that accessible luxury is bad, and it's not luxury, because for people like us, it's cheap. It's accessible. But for a lot of people, it's already a luxury. To go from a supermarket lipstick to a Chanel lipstick is already a luxury. So you create desire for another stratum in the society. And that stratum, is really, really important, because these people who buy the Chanel lipstick are the ones who are going to recognize super wealthy ladies in the street who have the Chanel quitted bag. You see what I mean?
Yes.
It's because they buy the lipstick, which is an exception for them, that they recognize the other ones for which the bag is an exception, but not the lipstick. Luxury is full of paradoxes. You have to manage paradoxes when you manage a luxury brand. You have to be recognized by a lot of people, but you should not sell to too many people. You have to be very rare, but at the same time, if you are too rare, people don't even know you exist, so you don't sell anymore. And so it's managing paradoxes always. But don't forget that luxury for some people is not what luxury is for us, and what is luxury for us is not the same as what for the ultra high net worth individuals luxury is.
Yes, and actually one of the early pieces of insights work I did inside an organisation was actually this, cutting down the pyramid. We were B2B, we were not selling direct to consumer. It was when I was at Moet Hennessy. And being in the market, we were working with really big, on-premise venues and retailers, and just talking about the different parts of the portfolio. It's often, as you say, when people are working on the brand at the beginning, they set their targets on the top of the pyramid, this is who we're going after, but there's really just so many layers. And the better you can understand that psychology of the layers, the more you are, and correct me if I'm wrong and tell me what you think, the more you're moving the needle on desirability, because it is that, isn't it? Everybody has to love you, but not everybody can buy you. And so you need to find a way to speak to everybody.
You have to remember that luxury is the exceptional of ordinary people and the ordinary for exceptional people. Once you have understood that, you understand it's not about price, it's not about diffusion, but it's about the emotion you put in the products.
Where can listeners go? Where do you recommend? What are the books or the people you tell people to go and pick up first?
For desire.
Yes, if somebody's coming into luxury.
I mean, to be honest, I would ask them to go back to the basics. I would ask them to read Freud, to read, what is desire from a psychological perspective? Because here we speak psychology. So I would go back to the, mimetic desire, for example, by René Girard is a very interesting topic. So you have several books about that. I would go, back to that. If you want to understand what you can do from an operational perspective, you need to understand how the brain of people works. It's about observing what's happening in the society in general. So it's also about research to some extent. It's not only about reading books. It's about, showing empathy to who your client is or could be is something not so easy to do, but very, very useful. So there is one methodology to do that, which is design thinking. I'm sure you know. You have tons of books about that. And beyond the design thinking methodology, I would recommend what is called the empathy map. It's how can I put myself in the shoes of my client from a desirability perspective.
For someone new to Semiotics, how can a luxury brand actually apply this kind of thinking? What does that look like in practice, especially when it comes to elevating perceived value? So how do we use Semiotics to elevate perceived value of our brand?
So Semiotics is a discipline which is used to analyze data. So it's like statistics, for when you have figures. When you do a survey, you do statistics. Okay? When you have qualitative data, you can use semiotics. The idea is to understand, thanks to semiotics, how meaning is built. So it's not the meaning itself, but it's how it's built, the process to get there. So there are two ways to use semiotics. One is for constructing value. So this is, for example, I want to put that meaning in my brand. I'm going to use semiotics to understand how I can translate those values into signs that people will observe. So to be very pragmatic is how can I translate my values into graphics, into choices of colors, into words. I work on lexicography with, for example, some clients. How you translate that into a tone of voice, how you basically, any in the merchandising, in the store environment, how to translate it. The second way of using semiotics is to decipher meaning. So here you have already the expression of something, and you analyze that expression to understand the hidden meaning behind what you face. For brands, you have, again, two ways to use it. The first is, might be for brand audit, for instance. So you have a brand which is already existing. So it's not for new brands, but it's more like, let's imagine you buy a brand or you relaunch a brand, okay? And you want to understand, thanks to what has been done by the company, what is the hidden message that is sent by the brand to its audience. Okay, so that's for auditing. If you stop here, it's interesting, but it's not really practical.
Yes.
The second way, I think, which is more interesting maybe for your audience, is basically for the client's behavior. You can use semiotics to understand, to decipher the hidden meaning behind your client behavior. When I say behavior, I speak of the body language in the store, how they actually move, but it's also about the verbatims that you have. It's also about the speech that you have, which might be gathered thanks to or collected thanks to interviews, but it can also be, for example, social listening. I use so much semiotics in social listening. Because in social listening, people write, sentences which often are not really well crafted, let's say.
Yeah.
But behind that, when you analyze thanks to, of course, very strong methodologies, you find figures of speech. You find the repetition of some words, sometimes even emojis, which are repeated, etc. But you are able to understand the hidden thoughts. I would say even the subconscious part,
subconscious is
the
what
subconscious.
came to mind. Yes,
That's why I was actually mentioning, the Freud thing, because it's part of the subconscious, and that's something very powerful for brands.
Can you tell me how you bring this to life, and how long does it take?
So, if we speak of the brand, the construction using semiotics to construct, the time it takes depends on the people you work with. So, it depends on the reactivity of the clients.
Where should they start? Like, in your experience and what you've seen, what should be the first thing they touch if we're going to start using our brand owners at home?
Honestly, it's about trying to understand for real who you are as a brand. A brand is a dual entity. A product or a service is something with characteristics. Point. A brand has characteristics, but has also an intangible part, which is this meaning we are talking about.
Yeah.
So you have to keep in mind that when you define your brand from scratch, it's not only about the efficacy, the materials, the manufacturing process. If you ask people what is your strength in the company, and I just get, tangible aspects, my brand is unbalanced. I need some intangible aspects. So that's one way to start, trying to understand where is my competition, for example, from an intangible perspective. If I am the Paris Opera and I'm talking to people who come to the opera to listen to music, my competition is direct. It's about the opera comique, which is also making concerts, okay? But if I talk to people who come to Paris Opera because it's a very nice looking place, you can take selfies and you can have champagne, at the break with your friends, and it's the place to be, then competition is shifting. What I'm selling is no more a show on stage. What I'm selling is an experience in the opera.
And that's where you get into the intangible.
Exactly. And I become, my competitor is indirect. It's no more another theater. It might be a 3-star Michelin restaurant. It might be whatever is really fancy and providing a social experience, a must-have experience where you can get, friends, champagne, and party, I would say, to some extent.
Yes.
So that's something super important. Your meaning will come from that duality. You can't be only intangible and you can't be only tangible. You need a little bit of both.
Let's move on to digital. We just touched on it a little bit there. So you've written and consulted extensively on how luxury brands use semiotics to signal prestige, especially in digital spaces where meaning and exclusivity are easy to lose. So my question is, how do luxury brands preserve or evolve these symbolic cues in the digital space where activating traditional codes is a lot harder? And we're kind of talking, e-commerce, CRM, socials, the whole ecosystem.
To be very honest with you, and that's a personal, sharing, I'm not convinced, if you talk e-commerce, I'm not very much convinced the way e-commerce is done right now in the luxury industry. One part of the problem, I think, is a lot of luxury brands were reluctant to go online, for e-commerce. But COVID hit. And from one day to the other, the stores were closed. So they decided to shift online. But they did it in a rush, probably asking agencies who had no clue about what luxury is. And in a very pragmatic way. If you take a lot of luxury websites where you can buy products and you take a mass market brand, honestly, Okay, maybe the quality of the picture is a little bit better. It's not so much different.
Yeah.
And I think part of the problem is that instead of thinking the e-commerce experience as an experience which should express the brand DNA, they just thought about it as an easy retail space. Something they would never do with brick and mortar, space. I mean, when they decide to open a store, they take an architect, designers, they go back to the brand DNA. So when it's really, I would say, fine-tuned when you think about the store. But for some reason, online, they went very fast and they forgot that online you have to recreate a staging, a space of expression of the brand. A lot of luxury brands right now in e-commerce, they are losing the luxury aspect.
I think it's a common belief system for people working in the industry. Another guest we've had on the show is someone who's been working at LVMH, in charge of e-commerce, in charge of the actual store. And one of the things she raised is much like you're saying, it's underwhelming, and all of the things that make that experience special in the store, Amazon's doing it better. If I buy something from Amazon, my experience is, and it's, we're talking about time being luxury and all convenience and all that sort of thing in today's world. And, what she was expressing was, if I'm buying something from a Dior website, I expect the things that make that channel luxurious. So it comes beautiful, it comes early, it comes fast, it's, very easy user experience. It does feel like the luxury businesses are on the back foot.
Yeah. Two reactions to that. First, I made some research about the reason why people would buy online in the luxury industry, at least in France. And what I found is an insight, which is if you go to a luxury store and you buy a product and you return it, they give you a voucher. If you go online, the legislation is not the same. They have to refund you. I mean, if you want to buy, let's say, a ring for your fiancé, you go to a store, she doesn't like the ring, you are stuck with the brand, you still need to buy something at the brand. Online, she doesn't like, they give you back the money.
Consumers have worked this out, and they're consciously choosing the channel.
Consciously for that. Wow. But that's something, I mean...
yeah.
So it's very pragmatic, I would say. The second reaction is about LVMH. Louis Vuitton had done something amazing before they opened their e-boutique. On their website, they had designed a full experience, which is the day of a typical Parisian person, lady. So you had the map of Paris, and you had, 8 a.m. coffee at that place. Then 10 a.m. I go at this exhibition in this museum. 12, I'm having lunch with my friend, etc., etc. And you could move with your mouse on the different places. And when you were clicking on the place, the little doll, I don't know how to say this, had some clothes and bag, which were considered the ideal way of dressing up and, accessorizing your outfit for that moment. And when you were clicking on the bag, for instance, it was redirecting you to a small e-commerce store, but with only the products of the experience.
That's crafted experience.
And that's crafted experience. You see? Here, of course, you have to accept that not all your products will be online. You have to accept that you are going to point on quality and not on volume online. It's possible. That's what I mean. It's possible. And it was very consistent with Louis Vuitton DNA, because the brand is about voyage, is about the art of traveling. So you were traveling literally in Paris, and while you were traveling, you change your outfit. So it was really, really consistent, really well done.
So what do you think people are doing wrong right now online?
I think it's case by case, but try to delete all the logos from your website.
Okay.
And once you have done that, look at the pages and see whether it still looks like your brand or not.
Oh, I like that. That's a good trick.
So take out the iconic products and the logos.
Okay.
And then it's crystal clear.
That's fascinating. And what would you say about socials It's not as much of a
I
problem?
know. It's a different topic because the issue with socials is that we speak of two types of content. You have content which is emitted by the brand, which can be super well crafted, really well designed. I mean, that's usually they do well. Okay, but there is a second type of content, which is the content posted on the brand by the clients. I don't think you can manage that. So you have one option, which is to do like Bottega Veneta and close your account. Okay, Bottega Veneta, they close their Instagram account. Well, that's an extreme solution. What I try to tell to my clients is the problem is not the content which is shared by the client. The problem is that it's not the right clients who share. If you do correctly your job as a marketer, people who buy from you are aligned with your set of values, your mindset, and so forth. So the way they post should be consistent with your way of behaving. You see what I mean?
Yes, yes.
So if you can't master what people say, you have to master people.
Yes.
You have to go a little bit,
Yes. And do you think it's a problem, I think, to that last point that you made, there's a lot of conversation now about luxury just got too greedy, was trying to get too big, it's become too accessible. Do you think that's maybe causing what you've just described a little bit as well?
Yes, of course. Of course. There is a famous sentence by Mr. Dumas, the CEO of Hermes, who says, if I take the train and I see two women with a Kelly bag, I know I have to stop production. So it's, of course, a little bit extreme, but it means what it means. It's you have to manage rarity. Then rarity doesn't mean that your brand should not be spread, but you have different ways to manage rarity. So you can work, for instance, on limited editions and have a serial, number on your products, which, by the way, which will make you sell at a higher price because it's even more exclusive. You can decide that some of your references are going to be offered only in certain stores. Again, if you take Hermes, you go to Hermes Paris, you go to the other place where I live in Venice, there is an Hermes store, they don't have the same products. So that means that naturally, people are going to buy the same. So Hermes is still very much present in the society, but not with only the same monogram. That's one way of doing. So this is really something you have to master. And lastly, but that's a very personal opinion, I think at some point you have to accept that growth cannot be eternal. And
yes.
And you have to point back to value and think about having the same people who bought from you buy again, rather than trying to get new markets.
So it's a really good segue actually into the next question about global context, because we just started touching on it there. So as we mentioned, luxury is growing and its growth isn't just centered to Paris, Milan and New York anymore. It's accelerating in markets like India and the Gulf, and there's a lot of talk about Dubai becoming the latest hub with the latest downturn in the more traditional large markets like the US and China. So how should brands adapt their symbolic storytelling for culturally distinct markets like Dubai or India, the sort of up-and-coming new luxury hubs, while still keeping a consistent global identity? And you touched on a little bit of that earlier.
You can't change a myth. What you should try to avoid, or what you should try to do, is to make sure the way you tell the myth is something which can be understood in the country where you are, which can touch people in the same way. Again, I come back to what I said earlier. It's not about the story, it's about the way you tell the story.
Yes.
There was a very interesting campaign, I think it's 2014, by Jaguar, who was trying to convey the same myth about Jaguar, which is how alive are you? It was their slogan at the time. So it is about, the thrill of being on the road, the taking risk, being very precise on the road, the speed, blah, blah, blah. UK market, they made a video, storytelling video, with all the actor movies, British from UK, who play villains in the movies. The staging was in London. They were driving, the Jaguar cars. You had all the flags, the big eye, the Tower Bridge, all the symbols of London, etc. Exact same time, in Taiwan, they issued a video to convey the same idea of how alive are you. And it was David Beckham driving a car, starting at Le Mans, so it was black and white, so Le Mans cars, in the race, up to the latest concept car. And the last picture is he's driving his concept car with all the previous cars behind him in London, Big Eye, Tower Bridge, the flag, the same symbols. So what I'm saying with this example is you can convey the exact same message, but with two complete different formats. What's happening is that in Taiwan, they had at that time no idea what Jaguar was.
But they knew who David Beckham was.
Exactly. Okay. And they understood, from the movie, you could see Le Mans race, and it was only about races on very risky roads. If you talk to British people, Jaguar is part of their DNA, I would say. So you have to do it in another way. You see, the myth is the same. The myth of risk being, risk-taking person. The myth is the same, but the way to say it is different. So when you go in a different country, you have to take into account the literacy that people have with your brand. And also, very, very, very important, you have to make sure that the symbolic elements you use in the usual way you present your brand convey the same meaning in the country where you go. The camellia flower, which is one of the symbolic components of Chanel, camellia flowers in Japan are used for funerals.
Yeah, that would not really
so
work.
So if you launch your brand in Japan with your camellia, it's a little bit... Little by little, you have to educate people so that the camellia becomes associated to Chanel and not to, funerals. And today, if you go to Japan on Omotesando, you have things with the camellia. It's not a problem.
Yes.
But that you have to adapt not the myth, not the story, but how the story is being represented.
Excellent segue into my next question, because what I also wanted to ask you is, what are the risks when brands adapt too much or not enough?
When they adapt too much, the big risk is that people feel like they are not honest in the way they do things, and that they are trying to adapt, but it's usually when they adapt too much, it's very stereotyped. You see what I mean?
Yes.
So people don't like it. Yes. So you face the risk of being accused of cultural reappropriation, of not respecting basically the country, even if you adapt.
Yes.
But if you adapt too much, you go in stereotypes, so people think it's artificial.
Yes.
If you don't adapt enough, that's also people think you are not respecting them.
Yes.
So you face the same problem that people think that it's a cultural,
which makes them lose connection, right? Because if they feel you didn't care enough to make enough of an effort to get to know us and give me something that means or speaks to me, well, then you actually don't care, and I don't care about you, right?
Exactly.
When you do see it go wrong, and maybe we've already answered it a little bit in the execution, when semiotics are not managed well with a brand, where do you often see the mistakes? Is it only in the execution, or have you seen it in other parts that we should watch out for?
One reason why sometimes it's going wrong is people think too much.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but...
and I can see how you could really overthink this and why your clients take so long to answer
sometimes people or
make a decision.
And you have too many people around the room. The biggest mistakes I've found are in the biggest brands you can imagine. When I work with very tiny craft brands,
yes,
they have no knowledge about marketing at all. They don't even know what Semiotics is, and they don't care. Everything they've done in branding when they have a brand comes from the guts. And the guts are consistent.
Yeah.
The guts are consistent. If you take a marketer for the perfume, a marketer for the lipstick, a marketer for the clothes, a marketer for the social media, in the end, they all think they are okay, they are right, but...
you lose the consistency.
You lose the consistency. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
So the way to avoid that is to have a brand manager, a chief brand officer, call it the way you want. But I would say someone who says go, no go, go, no go. Yes. Someone who is checking that everything which is done is actually consistent with the brand DNA. And Chanel has this role in every country where they are.
They have one person
dedicated to that. And I know some of them who told me, Anne-Flore, I have the the most terrible work in the job in the world because they have to say no to people all day.
Yes.
They come with an idea, oh, we could do that. No, we could do that. No, Dior is doing this. No. It's about preserving the brand, and not all occasions are good to seize.
Okay.
If you want to preserve your brand.
Yes, and much like you talked about already, I guess from a semiotics perspective, you've got to make sure that meaning maintains you're not diluting.
Come back to your brand DNA, The brand book is your Bible.
So would you say then, would that be your answer if I asked you how can a brand team protect against dilution? What would be the first thing that you say?
Yeah, having a gatekeeper. I mean, someone who is actually, who has authority on the rest to say yes or no.
To everything that's going out into the world, or would you?
Ideally, yes, but then, I mean, of course you can't, so you have to have other representatives. I mean, but there needs to be a double check, you see.
Yes.
Because some people do things which are diluting the brand, but it's not their intention.
Of course.
They just don't see it.
Could that be another, I guess, a second piece to your answer in the sense that make sure that there is that holistic view?
Yeah, alors, the first thing, and I haven't said that, but the first thing is train your people on your brand DNA. I mean, it's not because you have a book somewhere, which is used by the advertising agency, etc., that the new intern who is working on the new packaging for the launch of the perfume, he's knowledgeable about your brand book. So you first need to train people on the brand. That's usually part of what we call the employee value proposition. When you work on an EVP, you give a purpose to people. That's something we do also, working on EVPs, because you want to translate the brand for your employees. And you want to train people on understanding the brand, knowing the components of the brand, and making sure that they are able to understand how what we say about the commercial brand can be translated into the HR way of doing things. So also internally, that everything is aligned with the brand. But you have to train people. You can't assume people read the book, No,
I completely agree. And honestly, like I've seen this done so well, and I've seen where it's not done well when you start in a new business and nobody sits you down to talk you through the brand. I found that very confusing.
It's wrong.
To be asked to be maybe 3 months, 6 months into a job and you're working on things on those brands and nobody stopped to tell you that, there is this little story we always tell. And I remember Krug was a beautiful one when we were working on Krug. There was a story about the little red notebook from, the creator. And when you start in the business, it's the first thing they used to do. They used to sit you down and the brand manager used to come in and she would talk to you, or he would talk to you for an hour, everything about the brand. And when you left, you were obsessed. And can I tell you, I personally had that experience and I became so obsessed. I had my second child while I was still in the company and I asked, the current family member, Olivier Krug, because he was an ambassador at the time, to sign the vintage, to have the original member because I was so obsessed with this brand. We've talked about what happens when symbolic value breaks down, but I'd love to shift now to what it looks like when it's done well. And you've given some examples. And you don't just teach, you help brands apply this. So, you're very rare in that you can show us both sides. Can you give us a sense of the kind of work you're doing through Semioconsult? And you've talked a little bit about it. And if possible, maybe share an example even broadly, if you need to, of a brand challenge you've helped solve, something that will really help people resonate and go, okay, I understand what semiotics is and I can see very clearly how it can help my brand.
At Symbolic, we don't really solve issues because we work on strategic growth management through added value. So we help brands grow their perceived value, which is done through strategic branding or client experience management. Usually you have two ways to do it. So we do both. So that means that we don't work with brands which have financial issues or who needs to reorganize themselves or, that's not the type of brands. We work basically with brands, either with brands who startups, companies who have never thought about their brand, so from scratch, or companies who already have a brand strategy, but what they want to know is what they could do, for the next 10 years. So they want to go a little bit beyond what they are doing. It's not about budget constraints who make us decide. It's more about ambition than solving, issues. So we have different types of works. Of course, the thing we do the most is building brand platforms, helping brands build their platform, or making an audit to try to understand through the audit what could be improved or what could be leveraged, to go a little bit further. From the brand platform, we may go into operational aspects that I have already described, but that may go up to helping the company making for the company a creative brief for a new website, for example. So we don't do the website, but we work as a gatekeeper, the initial gatekeeper, actually.
And you become the meaning expert, don't you, to everyone that they're outsourcing to.
And that's a little bit of a problem, because sometimes brands, they come back, years after, say, okay, you know better than us around.
Yes.
And but we have a 10 years after sales service, because a brand is something you build over 10 years. So we believe that if we help a brand build its DNA, we need to be here for them during 10 years. That's one way of doing it.
That's interesting. That's interesting. And all of your clients are luxury clients?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
No.
You work with premium clients as well?
Not even. Sometimes I have clients who are... I don't work with low cost, because, of course, it's not...
not your specialty.
No, but low cost is not looking after value. So
of course.
It's not at all. But no, I work with the space and defense industry. I work with... do-it-yourself companies. I've worked with wine industry, but not luxury. With a theme park in France, a theme park. So it's called Le Puy du Fou. It's like a Disney World, but it's only about spectacles, only shows. I worked with museums. I would say the link in between all these is, even though they are not luxury and they don't sell luxury products, they want to be inspired by the luxury model. It's always brands who care about aestheticism, who care about emotions, who care about the values they can put, which is intangible in what they sell. The do-it-yourself. It's not even do-it-yourself. It's a concrete brand. Concrete, but you put on the ground. So they were doing concrete where the water can go through, so to respect the environment, etc.
Oh wow!
So and then they were. I have no idea how to say that in English, but in between the concrete squares, you have some joints. Which can expand depending on the temperature. And what they had invented are joints which could be colorful and which could also take the light during the day and in the evening, light up. And thanks to that, the idea was we don't sell anymore something for building homes and garage and streets, but you can do your logo, for example, in the floor with the joints. Okay. And during the night, the logo is appearing. You can light up, the streets without disturbing the birds, without big lights, and it becomes natural. So they were in a business where they were sold at Leroy Merlin. For people who know France, Leroy Merlin, so it's not really fancy, Leroy Merlin. But the way they were perceiving their offering was not a product. It was more about an experience on its own, you see. So it was not luxury. It was not luxury, but it was aspirational to some extent, or aesthetic.
We're going to wrap up with a couple of mentor style questions for our listeners at home, our emerging luxury professionals. But before we do, where can people find you? For anybody listening who wants to learn more, who wants to connect with you, or even has a brand problem to talk to you about, how do they find you?
So we have a website, of course, which is in French, English, and Italian, because we work in the 3 languages. We have social media. Of course, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And I also have, so if you are not interested by working with us, but just by listening to things I talk about, I have a YouTube channel also. So same thing, you type my name and it's popping out. And you can get access to the conferences that I do, which are public, of course. So can be academic conferences or inspirational speech or, things, interviews. More. If you want to get access, there is a full session on desirability, for example, which is available. So if this is a topic you want to dig a little bit deeper, you can go.
The website is Semioconsult, spelled SEMIO.
Yes.
Consult.
So
we're going to wrap now. We're going to ask the mentor style questions. What's one of the biggest myths or misconceptions about working in luxury or premium brand strategies, something you wish more people knew? And it's a good one because you work across all of them.
One of the misconceptions that you have is that luxury clients are whatever clients. And that's not true. Even a normal client, someone who is not used at buying luxury,
okay,
the first time he or she buys luxury, it will be a complete different person. Because it's not rational purchase that you make,
Yes.
but it's irrational. Everything you design for people, you have to remember that
They're not acting themselves.
you don't talk to people's minds. You talk to people's hearts. And that's very different.
Is there anything else on this topic or from your experience that we haven't touched on but you think marketers or brand leaders really need to hear?
Well, I think this one is more a piece of advice for people who want to work in the luxury industry. That's coming from the HR managers that I know. Often people who want to work in the luxury industry, they think that they have to be a luxury consumer or client. In luxury companies, we don't need people who consume luxury products. We need people who understand people who consume luxury products. And that's very different because, of course, you have to be passionate about the industry. You have to be passionate about the category you work for or the brand you work with. But we don't care if you don't wear the perfume, if you don't wear the shoes. That's not the point. It's not because you have a Hermès necklace or a Chanel bag, a Louboutin shoes and a Cartier watch that you will be a good person working for the luxury industry. So it's not because you know luxury as a client that you are eligible to work in the industry. So my piece of advice is to do exactly what you did, is to do an MBA, which is focusing on the luxury, industry. You can take courses at Van Cleef and Apple School, for example. You can, train yourself because what you do as a client is not what we expect from you in the companies.
And do you believe that it's stackable? So somebody who's already got marketing experience in a non-luxury category could still come in, learn it, and still be great. To stack the two.
Alors, yes and no.
Okay.
For me, the most important component when you want to work in the luxury industry is not even the knowledge you have about luxury. It's about your cultural capital. So you can't work in the luxury industry. I mean, you can't have success and be very, do things in the right way if you are not someone with a lot of culture. You need to know your history. You need to know religions. You need to know paintings, arts. I mean, that's fundamental. That's fundamental. Because luxury is so much embedded in the history of the countries, France, Italy, which the history is related to religion, is related to arts. I mean, we could make a session on is luxury art, is art luxury? So these questions are fundamental. So whether you know the history of Cartier, Chanel, Dior, you can read books, okay, and you can watch videos and you can learn. You can be curious. You have to be curious, very important. You have to be curious when you want to work in the industry. But something you can't learn in 6 months is basically the culture level you have accumulated since you were a kid.
Yes.
And that's important. So my advice, if we have students looking at your show, my advice is to go to museums. As a professor, I say to my students, go to museums, go to the cinema, go read books, look at movies, including the old movies. Cultivate yourself. Very, very important.
And what's really fascinating with that is some of the other topics you've mentioned already throughout the show is it's that it's all about emotion. All those things are invoking something human out of people, and it's a feeling and it's an experience. And do you know how many people I've talked to who have come in a non-linear path into luxury from arts backgrounds, which I find really fascinating, that whole creativity and...
But I did that myself. Huh? I'm an engineer in the army, and then I started working for Guerlain. So I did a master degree, which was not even a luxury master, and I started working at Guerlain. I don't have but I'm a ballet dancer.
Yes.
So I already had, that legacy and that art thing. And plus my parents took me to whatever museum in the world you can imagine. So
it's the French thing. I have a French husband, and our family's been in France for about 4 or 5 years. And the way I've seen my children change from this cultural aspect, it's just in your DNA and it's just expected. And I guess that's the charm of Europe. We could talk about it for hours. It's what makes it so...
topic.
It's another topic. And to celebrate the industry on a very last note, what's been your favourite moment or most memorable experience working in the world of luxury?
I think the most memorable moments is when you work on a project and I mean, you were the one choosing the name. You did the brand platform. You advise people on the packaging, on the products, on the layout, and then it's coming out and you see it, JC Deco billboard in the street, and you're like, oh, that's me.
Yes.
That was the name. The name is mine.
When you
The
see it come
concept
to
is mine.
life.
Yes, when it comes to life. Yeah.
And people desire it.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's been an incredible conversation. Like I said, we were so lucky to be able to get you into the studio. You've been so generous with your advice and your tips. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emilia.